What's up, guys? We're back with a full NBA slate here on Wednesday, April 3rd. The Tuesday games haven't all finished, but we cashed one of our biggest bets of the day already. We had Indiana State minus 3.5. They came through for us in that one, put that on the board. That was a big win. We've got some other key games going on right now, so we'll see how things finish up. Right now, we've seen the Lakers minus 12.5. That came through pretty comfortably. The Bucks game, that did not go our way, but in general, we just still have a ton still going on. Hopefully, we can have the Spurs keep that game close against Denver still. We've got the Kings out there. Our other biggest bet of the day is the Mavs plus 1.5. They're having a little bit of trouble with the Warriors right now, but hopefully they can find a way in that one. We have a good NBA slate to break down tonight with a bunch of great matchups and some interesting trends. Let's get after it. Hit that like button for good luck on all your bets today and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We have lots of room to grow right now with still over 75% of viewers not subscribed. It's 100% free and will keep you up to date with our picks every single day. These videos are sponsored by StumpThisRed.com. Click the link in the description to go over there and join our free email list and check out our top confidence plays on all the major sports. Comment below with all the bets you're considering today. We will give you the best intel we have and we respond to absolutely every single comment, so let us know anything you want to say about my picks, these videos, or anything you see here. Now let's dive into our first game of the day. We've got the Lakers going up against the Wizards. The Lakers come into this game looking healthy, fresh off of a win last night over the Toronto Raptors. You're going to want to wait on this Lakers injury report a little bit. We definitely expect to see LeBron and Anthony Davis show up on the injury report, but we also pretty much expect to see both of them play in this game. The Lakers have actually won 7 of the last 8, their last 2 in a row to bounce back from that tough loss against the Indiana Pacers, but those last 2 wins were over the Nets and the Toronto Raptors, so we're not exactly going to throw them a parade about that. In the win over Toronto, we saw LeBron go 10 of 12 from the field overall, playing absolutely great. He scored 23 points. D'Angelo Russell played really well in that game. He went 7 of 14 from 3. Anthony Davis played well. Just up and down the roster, the Lakers looked very, very good. Their bench looked good in that game. Nobody really had to play extended minutes in this game. It was not one that stayed close for very long, so we don't really have to worry too much about the Lakers having a big fatigue factor in this one despite having to travel. They're flying from Toronto to Washington for this game, and while the Lakers have not been a team that's been great playing on no rest, this seems like a slightly different situation since they are really not having played a full game, getting the comfortable blowout in this one. They're not going to have quite as many of the aches and pains you'd expect to see from an older team playing on back-to-back nights. The Wizards coming into this one fresh off an absolutely shocking win over the Milwaukee Bucks last night. They played great in that game. We saw them overcome a Giannis triple-double to get the win. Corey Kispert, of all people, went off for 27 points. We saw some signs of life from Jordan Poole, although he only scored 16 points in the night and went 1 of 6 from three-point range. The bench looked really, really good for the Wizards, and in general, they just shot 50.5% from the field overall. They won this game despite shooting only 23% from three-point range. They did not keep things even with the Bucks on the boards at all. We really just saw a very, very cold shooting night from Milwaukee. They went 11 for 48 from three-point range, so not exactly a banner shooting night from this team. They didn't have Dame Lillard out there. When you're replacing Lillard with Pat Bev, your offensive production is going to take a big hit. The Wizards needed this win to snap a 3-game losing streak, but they were losing to teams that we kind of expect them to lose to, which is basically everybody in the league at this point. It's kind of surprising to see the Wizards playing this well right now as they're having some tough injury problems. We've seen Tyus Jones and Kyle Kuzma miss time. We've also seen Marvin Bagley deal with a knee issue, but he did play in this game, so I guess we can kind of expect him to play in the next one. More importantly, though, we're going to want to see where Tyus Jones and Kyle Kuzma are at in their attempts to return from injury. Right now, Tyus Jones, he's technically questionable for this game, but since he didn't play against the Bucks, I tend to kind of doubt he's going to play in this game. Obviously, keep an eye on that injury report, though. We see Kuzma with his heel problem that's continuing to bug him. He didn't play against the Bucks, and there's no real reason to expect him to necessarily come back for this one, although it is the second half of a back-to-back. Really, we see Washington kind of trying to tank out the end of the season here. I would assume that management didn't really want them winning this game necessarily, as they try and lose as many games as possible to improve draft stock down the road, but hey, the players were out there on the court, they played hard, they played well, and they came away with a win. In the trends for this game, we see the Lakers. They're a pretty decent road team. They're 17-20 against the spread on the road, but they're only 9-4 against the spread on no rest, but like we said, they didn't really have to play a heavy load of minutes, so maybe that doesn't come into play quite as much in this one. Washington comes in this game, they are absolutely atrocious. They're a league worst 13-24-1 against the spread when they're playing at home this season. That's terrible. That's a pretty embarrassing number. The Wizards are also a bad team when playing on no rest. They're 3-9 against the spread on no rest this season, so just in general, we're definitely looking at the Lakers minus 12.5 as our lean on this spread right now. Obviously, keep a very close eye on that injury report heading up to game time, and especially after after shoot around we should get some updates, but in general we're leaning towards the Lakers. In the over under for this game, we see it's currently at 233.5. There's some interesting trends in this one. The Lakers are 62.2% to the over when playing on the road. They're also 9-3-1 to the over when playing on no rest. We see that Washington is a little bit different. They are 51.4% to the under at home, but they are 8-4 to the over on no rest. We're definitely looking at the over a little bit in this game after we see what the injury report has to tell us. We obviously need most of the big scoring talent type players to be out there on the floor for us to be taking an over bet in this one. Next up, we got the Detroit Pistons going on the road to take on the Atlanta Hawks. Detroit comes into this game fresh off of a kind of embarrassing loss to the Memphis Grizzlies, but when you look at what happened in that one, you can kind of see how this could go down. Jalen Duren got knocked out of that game against the Memphis Grizzlies with a pretty nasty injury. He was dealing with the possibility of a concussion and also a tooth/mouth injury. He currently holds no injury designation for this one, so it looks like he's cleared everything okay and is likely to be out there on the floor for this game. It's going to be interesting to see, though. Detroit's obviously tanking out the end of the season, so watch that injury report for any kind of updates you can get on that one. We also see Cade back on the injury report. He's currently questionable for this game due to left knee injury management. We're going to see how hard the Pistons are going to kind of tank it out in this game. Right now, with the spread looking at the Hawks minus 12.5, it looks like they are very unlikely to play in this game, but we should have way more news about that after shoot around and leading up closer to game time. In that loss to the Grizzlies, we saw Cade look very, very good. He scored 36 points in that game. Ivy looked good. He scored 20 points. The bench looked good. Up and down the roster, this team is starting to show some definite signs of life, even outside of their top players. That's a very encouraging sign after a very long and very disappointing Piston season up to this point. They're going to need to play better in this game, going up against a fairly weak opponent, but one that seems destined to make it into the play-in in the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks come into this game, they're playing a little bit better. They've somehow won 4 of their last 5 with 2 wins over the Celtics in that mix. They got a very solid win over a tired Chicago Bulls team their last time out, and right now we can see they're almost locked into that final play-in spot in the Eastern Conference. They're currently 6 games up on the Brooklyn Nets, who are going absolutely nowhere, so we're definitely going to see the Atlanta Hawks playing some semi-postseason basketball this season. In their win over the Chicago Bulls, we saw 4 Hawks starters scoring double figures. They shot a staggering 47% from three-point range. They went 19 of 40 from deep. That is a great number. If this team can keep up that hot shooting, they could even surprise some teams in the play-in, and the team they're going to be facing in the play-in is the Chicago Bulls, so this win for them looks pretty solid. They won by 12 points at Chicago. Obviously, the Bulls were a tired team for that game, but still, it's got to mean something. We saw Murray have a fairly pedestrian game by his standards, but he did a little bit of game management. He crashed the boards. He did a lot of good things. He did have 5 turnovers in the game and 5 personal fouls, so it wasn't exactly his best night out there, but just in general, the Hawks looked pretty good in that game. Atlanta has a clean bill of health coming into that one, so that's very encouraging for them. Looking at the trends for this game, we see Detroit is 19-17 against the spread playing on the road. That's a pretty solid number, and we see Atlanta is a terrible 15-23 against the spread at home this season. However, they are playing better lately. It looks like the spread right now is the Hawks minus 12.5. That is a ton of points right now. If Detroit is even close to healthy for this game, we'll definitely like the points, but right now that big number scares me off quite a bit. It makes me think that we're likely going to see Cade sit out as well as Jalen Duren, so that would immediately make this game a pass for me. I'm not going to be laying that many points with the Hawks. Looking at the over-under for this one, we see that the Pistons are an over team when playing on the road, and we see that Atlanta is a league best 62.2% to the over when playing at home. Look at this over-under, guys. It's 221.5. I feel like that's a lot of points to get to for the Pistons, but I think the Hawks can take care of the heavy lifting in this one. Give me the over in this game as my lean. We're not going to be on this against the spread number unless we find out some very important injury news. Next up, we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder going on the road to take on the Boston Celtics. The Thunder lost last night to the Philadelphia 76ers, snapping a 2-game winning streak where they took down the Suns and the New York Knicks. We saw Joel Embiid make a semi-surprise return to the court in that game. It was pretty crazy to all of a sudden just see him out there, and the Thunder didn't really have any good answers, which isn't a shock. They don't really have the size or the just overall size to deal with Joel Embiid. Also, the Thunder were nowhere near full strength for that game, so we're going to give them a little bit of a pass losing to the 76ers in this one. What's going to be most important for Oklahoma City right now is their injury report. Looking at that, we see SGA and Jalen Williams both listed as out right now. Will they be back for this game, though? Currently, it looks like Jalen Williams, he is still dealing with that ankle injury. We don't know for sure if he'll be out there. It is the second half of a back-to-back, so there's a decent chance that we could see him out there on the floor. SGA, though, on the other hand, it sounds like while he didn't play in that game against the 76ers. There's also a decent chance he can miss out on this game. He missed his third contest out of the last 4 games. He's dealing with a right quad bruise. It must be a pretty nasty bruise, guys. Obviously, the Thunder are trying to get healthy right now, but you would also think they'd be kind of interested in maybe getting that top seed in the Western Conference. They're currently tied, a 3-way tie with Minnesota and Denver, although that is clearly going to change with the outcome of Denver's game tonight. So we'll see how that ends up going, but they're very, very much in the mix for that top spot in the West. They're going to need to play well in this game going up against the Boston Celtics. The Celtics come into this one, they're going to be fresh for this one, at least compared to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are playing on back-to-back nights. The Celtics just won a relatively close game given their opponent at Charlotte, and now they're making a big step up in competition, especially if we see the Thunder have the majority of their players back there out on the court. Boston doesn't really have a ton to play for at this point in the season, and that's been a little bit obvious as they've been uneven recently in their overall performances. Losing those back-to-back games to the Atlanta Hawks really gave me a lot of doubts about this team, but they did have a solid performance taking down the Pelicans and then another solid performance against Charlotte. Now they're back at home for this one. Right now their injury report is looking fairly clean. We see Jaylen Brown on there. He's considered questionable for this game with his hand issue, but I think it's fairly likely that we see him out there. He'd be at full strength. Looking at this game overall, the spread is Boston minus 8.5. That seems like kind of a lot of points to me, but they're a solid team at home. OKC is banged up and they're playing on no rest. The Thunder are 19-17-1 against the spread on the road, and they're 7-5 against the spread on no rest. Boston 20-15 against the spread at home. That's decent, but not amazing. I'm going to wait to see the injury report on this one before I give a significant lean on the spread in this one. But looking at the over-under for this game, we see that Oklahoma City is a 56.8% to the over team and a 72.7% to the over team when they're playing on no rest. Boston is a slight under team when they're playing at home. We can't even make a great lean on this over-under until we have more information. I would definitely think I would lean towards the under in this game. I know Oklahoma City has those big gaudy offensive numbers, but if they don't have SGA out there and everybody else, it's really tough for them to get to those huge numbers, I would think. So we're going to kind of stay off of this game for now until we get a little bit more clarity with the injury report. Next up, we got the Indiana Pacers going on the road to take on the Brooklyn Nets. This is the second game of a little home and home series for this one, where we saw the Pacers get the 133-111 win in game 1. That game was in Indiana, and this one will be in Brooklyn. The Pacers come into this game looking relatively healthy. We do see Miles Turner is listed as day-to-day. He's technically questionable for this one with a finger injury, but I think there's a decent chance that we see him play in this game. He did have X-rays on the hand, but they came back negative. He did go see a hand specialist, which is a little bit concerning, but hopefully they've got that cleared up. He is a big man. Hopefully they can just tape that thing up and he'll get back in there. Obviously the idea is you don't want it to be aggravated any further, as this is a team that has at least some playoff aspirations, and they're taking on a pretty weak opponent. In game 1 of this little home and home series, we saw the Pacers get a comfortable win. We saw Halliburton score 27 points. We saw the Pacers get plenty of contributions from their bench. They shot over 41% from three-point line. They won the battle of the boards. They only had 9 turnovers and forced 15. Just in general, they looked like they were in control of this game. We see the Brooklyn Nets come into this one. Their injury report also looks pretty clean. No huge red flags on that one. I'm not going to be too worried about any of those. The real problem right now is Brooklyn's just not very good. They're kind of tanking out the end of the season, it feels like. I'm not very impressed with what I'm seeing from them. They don't really have any reason to tank, though. They're kind of trying to win games, but they really aren't going anywhere fast. This team doesn't own very much of its future draft picks. They're just in a pretty bad spot overall, and things could get kind of dark. We're looking at Brooklyn plus 7.5 in this game. That's the spread we're currently at. We see that Indiana is a solid 20-16-1 against the spread when playing on the road. We're definitely into that number. Give me Indiana minus 7.5, at least as a partial lean. The over-under number we're looking at is 230.5. I don't really see any major trends to back one side or the other. Indiana is kind of an under team when they're playing on the road. They're 57.1% to the under, but we see Brooklyn is slightly an over team when playing at home, so I don't have a massive lean on this one. I guess I would lean slightly towards the under, seeing a little bit of offensive regression, but these teams can really put up some points, so you never really know on that one. We won't be on the over-under, but we will be on Indiana minus 7.5. Moving right along, we're looking at the Memphis Grizzlies going on the road to take on the Milwaukee Bucks. Memphis comes into this game fresh off of a 2-point win playing at Detroit their last time out. That was a solid win. We saw Jaren Jackson Jr. bounce back in a huge way, scoring 40 points, 27 of which came in the second half. Memphis has not had a lot to feel good about this season. They've dealt with a ton of injuries, and right now we're still seeing injuries taking their toll on this team. Desmond Bane has been ruled out for this game already. We see Vince Williams Jr. He will be inactive for Wednesday against the Bucks as well. So they're missing 2 starters for this game. Not a great spot spot for Memphis, but they haven't had many great spots all season long. This team has just had a tough road. Another team that feels like they've had a tough road but are currently sitting at 47-28 overall is the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have lost 3 of their last 4 overall. They just lost at Washington. They lost to the Wizards. That's kind of embarrassing. Giannis played great in that game. This happened last night, so the Bucks are going to have to play on no rest in this one. Can't be a good feeling for Milwaukee. Things are just not going the way they wanted to. Sure, they're currently in the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, and all this team really should be focused on is the playoffs, but right now they're not healthy. Things did not look great without Damian Lillard in there. Some of the times, though, this year they haven't looked great with Dame in there. Right now we see Dame and Pat Bev are both listed as day-to-day. Lillard's dealing with a groin strain, so I think it's kind of unlikely we see him come back and play in this game already. We also saw Pat Bev suffer a right ankle sprain during the loss to the Wizards. He did not return in that game. He finished only 2 points in 22 minutes. Kind of a typical Pat Bev night if you ask me, but hey, he plays some solid defense every once in a while and he yells a lot, so maybe he's good. Will we see him play in this game, though? It seems slightly unlikely to me. An ankle injury can be kind of tough. We're going to wait on this game. We're going to see if we can get a little bit better injury news, a little bit more clarity out there. But right now, the Grizzlies, they played well in their last game. They're getting 13.5 points in this one. We see Memphis is 22-17 against the spread on the road. Milwaukee is only 17-18-1 against the spread at home. They're 6-6 against the spread on no rest. They've got to be pretty tired for this game. I think we'll see the Grizzlies keep this thing close if both Dame and Pat Bev sit this game out. Looking at the over-under for this game, it's currently at 224.5. Memphis is a nearly 60% to the over on the road team. That's a pretty big trend. We like that one a decent amount. And looking at Milwaukee, they are 58.3% to the over and 7-5 to the over on no rest. This isn't a huge number. Neither one of these teams play very much defense. Give me the over in this one. We're going to be on the Grizzlies and the points, I think, but we'll definitely be on the over 224.5. Next up, we're looking at the Toronto Raptors going on the road to take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Toronto comes into this game fresh off of a not very competitive loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. They've lost 14 games in a row now, not having a very good time. This team did bring back Quickly and RJ Barrett. That did not help, though. They did not get a win. They didn't even really keep things very competitive. Those guys should have been rusty, but both of them actually played pretty well. They combined for 48 points. It's just the Raptors aren't putting a whole ton of talent out there around them right now, and Toronto just isn't defending anyone. They allowed 128 points on well over 50% shooting from the Lakers. They let them shoot well over 43% from the three-point line. This just isn't a very good defensive Toronto team. They're not really playing together. They're just kind of trying to make their way through the end of the season as they tank things out. The Timberwolves come to this game fresh off of a solid win last night over the Houston Rockets. We saw Anthony Edwards have another big dunk. Naz Reid played great in this game, putting up 25 points and 6 rebounds. Just in general, the Timberwolves are looking great right now. They're only a half game back of the Denver Nuggets for the top spot in the Western Conference. They're tied with the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a very exciting race down here for the top spot in the West. The Timberwolves have kept pace. They really haven't hit too much of a speed bump here with Cat being out. There's really not a lot of clarity on when he's going to be back, or really if he's going to be back at all. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do in the playoffs if he doesn't come back, or regardless, Anthony Edwards is an absolute monster. One of the best players in the league, very clearly. I'm sure that's news to absolutely no one who's watching this video. Toronto comes in this game. They're 18-17-1 against the spread. The Timberwolves are minus 15.5 in this one. Minnesota is only 17-17-2 against the spread at home. They're 5-6 against the spread on no rest. We see that Toronto is 5-7 against the spread on no rest. I don't have a huge lean on this spread, guys, except for to take the points. That's an awful lot of points, and I don't really see Minnesota putting in the effort to absolutely blow out an opponent like that, especially a bad opponent. They've done a little bit of playing up or down to the level of their competition here, at least since the Cat injury. So give me Toronto and the points in this one. Looking at the over-under, it's currently at 215.5. Toronto is a league best 62, almost 63% to the over when they're playing on the road. They're 54.6% to the over on no rest. Minnesota is a 60% to the under at home kind of team, but they're a league best 9-2 to the over on no rest. We're definitely going to be on this over, guys. The over-under is only 215.5. Definitely give me the over in this game. It's going to be my much bigger bet. We're not going to really be very much on the 15.5, although we don't hate it. So overall, Toronto plus 15.5 and over 215.5. Next up, we've got the Orlando Magic going on the road to take on the New Orleans Pelicans. Orlando comes into this game fresh off of back-to-back wins. They only got a 1-point win over the Portland Trail Blazers, though. That's a little bit too close for comfort going up against a terrible opponent. Right now, we see the Magic fully healthy for this game, so they've got a clean bill of health coming into this one. They should be revved up and ready to go. Orlando is currently sitting in the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. How crazy is that, guys? We can see the Orlando Magic have home court advantage here in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. In that extremely narrow win over Portland, we saw all 5 Magic stars starters scored in double figures. Everybody really looked good in this game pretty much. Their starters did the bulk of the heavy lifting from 3-point range. Just in general, this team, it's got a very solid starting five, but on the bench, things start to get a little bit sketchy. We did see Jonathan Isaac play relatively well, but Markelle Fultz had a terrible night. Cole Anthony was decent. This bench unit isn't one that fills me with a ton of optimism, but they're not terrible. Don't get me wrong. They should be good enough to hold the doors when the starters need a little bit of a break. They're taking on a serious opponent in this one. They're going up against the New Orleans Pelicans, who come into this game fresh off of a tough loss to the Suns. New Orleans is pretty much healthy for this game, with the obvious exception of Brandon Ingram, who's still trying to work his way back. We don't really know when he's going to be back there on the floor, but the hope is that it'll be before too long. They obviously need him losing back-to-back games here, but losing to the Celtics and to the Suns, not exactly terrible. They did give up a staggering 52 points to Devin Booker in that game, but we all know he can have those nights where he just goes absolutely nuclear. The Pelicans are currently clinging to that 6th seed out in the West. They're only a single game up on the Phoenix Suns, so every single game matters for them. They really want to avoid that play-in tournament for obvious reasons. It's going to be a very, very scary place to be. Looking at the spread in this one, we see the Pelicans are -4.5 playing at home. Orlando is 22-14 against the spread when playing on the road. That's a pretty solid number. We also see that New Orleans is 20-17 against the spread at home. Kind of hard to make a prediction on this one against the spread. I tend to lean towards the Pelicans and the points in this one, but the over-under is very interesting. Both of these teams have significant trends pointing to the under. Orlando is 54% to the under when playing on the road, and we see New Orleans is 54% to the under when playing at home. So give me a small taste of the under in this one. I don't think we'll be on the against the spread number in a meaningful way. Last but not least, we're looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers going on the road to take on the Phoenix Suns. Cleveland comes into this game. They just won a fairly solid one over the Utah Jazz their last time out. They just won a fairly solid one over the Utah Jazz last night, so they'll be playing on no rest in this game. Cleveland, their health has been their major concern coming into this one. There's all kinds of rumblings about what Donovan Mitchell is going to do in the offseason. Hopefully that doesn't derail what this team is trying to do this season, as they're in a very good spot. They won that game against the Jazz without Donovan Mitchell playing due to left knee injury management. Hopefully he'll be back for this game. That seems what the reports would indicate, is that he's likely to play in this one. Going against the Suns, they're going to need all the help they can get. Cleveland's currently sitting in the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're a game and a half back of the Milwaukee Bucks, so they're still within reach of that 2 seed. Obviously, you want to finish this as high as you possibly can to avoid having to play against the Boston Celtics. Cleveland's going to need to put their best foot forward in this game, taking on the Suns, who come off of a solid win at New Orleans, taking down the Pelicans behind a massive, massive game from Devin Booker. But Phoenix in general has kind of been alternating wins and losses. They haven't been looking too hot. They're only 14-22-1 against the spread when playing at home. Looking at their injury report for this game, we see that Grayson Allen is listed as questionable with his ongoing hip issue. I think there's some chance we see him play in this game. I don't think it's like one of those questionable but very unlikely to play situation. I think it's a true questionable. Our biggest concern in this game is Phoenix and their terrible trends against the spread when playing at home. Phoenix is -5.5. We're going to wait a little bit on this one to see what the injury report is going to tell us about Donovan Mitchell, but if he plays in this game, we're definitely going to be on Cleveland +5.5. Looking at the over-under for this one, we see that Cleveland is a very solid under team on the road. They're nearly 60% to the under when playing on the road, and Phoenix is 52.8% to the under when playing at home. Definitely give me the under in this game. It's 225.5, so not a huge number, but we'll definitely take a taste of that under in this one. That's all the games we have for today, guys. Hit that like button for good luck on all of your bets, and subscribe if you're new. Let me know in the comments any questions you have on today's slate. Thanks for watching. You can click the link in the description to check out StumpTheSpread.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for more sports betting action.